Welcome to Power Conversations and Connections with Susan. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and join the conversation. Today, I want to talk about how we get through some of the most challenging times and use that to help us to maneuver forward, right? This is about a 6 mile walk, 6 miles. Not a joyful 6 miles, not a intentional 6 miles. It was not a orchestrated 6 miles. I was in a foreign city with what I thought was people who, were part of my circle, and they were, right? I had met new people along the way, but I was in a really tough spot in my personal life. Me personally, I don't mean just in my personal life, but professionally as well. So, me as a whole, I was in a tough space. Definitely, as we would say, um, trying to figure out how we got here. How did I get in this particular spot? And so it took a lot of soul searching. It was a pause, right? And I had to deal with the pause in my life, the brokenness, the lack financially, the lack of support emotionally, the lack of being able to take care of, not take care of, provide for my daughter in the way that she had become accustomed, in the way that I had become accustomed, the way that I raised her, right? And at the same time, keeping as much of this to myself as I could, you know? But this particular day, I was driving and someone rear ended me. Now we're driving, we're moving along, and she just stopped as if a stop sign dropped out of the sky. She stopped. The lady in front of me, I stopped short of her, but the person behind me hit me and totaled, I think at the time I knew, but I wasn't exactly sure, totaled my car, which was devastation on top of what was already devastating me. The nights that I would go home and cry, or, ask God where He was and wonder when this particular time was going to be over and if one more thing happened, right? You ever had that? If one more thing happens, it's going to be a a worse time, right? And I was at that, if one more thing happened, like, I don't even have the room. Like, where is it coming from? How does it even creep in? So I got rear ended and I had to have my car towed. Okay. But I'm in a strange place. And the relationships that I had in that place had severed, had been long term relationships, had severed. So I was on my own, right? I couldn't call anyone. I dared not call those people and expose myself once again, right? Come across as someone who can, why can't you take care of yourself? What is really going on? Meanwhile, not exposing any of this to my family at home, the friends I had at home, because of shame, right? Just walking and wallowing in shame, uncertain about what was going to happen to me, what was going to happen to my daughter, and how, we were going to get back on our feet. Shouldn't have never gotten in this situation in the first place, but I was there. So my car got towed and I had no one to call and I had no money. We Uber today, but Ubering wasn't a thing back then. And I had to be towed off of, because I was on a major bridge and I had to be towed off. So they came, they towed me off. And of course, I had to incur an expense for that. And he said, well, I'll just take you to the shop where your car can get fixed and we can add it into the bill. This is someone that I partner with, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm trying to hold back the tears, and the situation is just getting worse and worse. So I agree. He takes me to this spot. It's safe, nothing like that. But I get my car there, and the guy says, we'll look at it, we'll let you know in a couple of days or whatever. And we'll tack this gentleman's fee for towing you and bringing you here onto that. I'm thinking, okay, now, how am I going to get home? How am I going to get to my apartment that I was able to be blessed with by nobody but Jesus and the people who helped me? How was I going to get there? And how far was it? I didn't know. I had no idea. I took everything out of my car and put it in a backpack. I always had a backpack at that time. Put it all in a backpack, all the CDs. And that's when it was, when we were still playing CDs in the car. Put everything in my backpack, and I began to walk. And as I began to walk, I began to cry because I truly didn't. The route was familiar to me that I needed to take. Walking on and traveling under the underpass, that was familiar to me because I had traveled this way before, but by car. So I began to walk, and I just kept saying, "Don't cry, Sue." That's what I tell myself when I get really antsy and I get scared and, I cry. I kind of talk to myself, don't cry. It's going to be okay. Don't cry. Just keep going. And I told myself, just keep walking. On my phone, GPS, walking, telling me where to go. And I kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I got tired and I got weary and I got angry at myself. I got angry at the relationships that I thought that I had when I had come to this place. I got really disturbed by the fact that I was in this place. But along the way, that pause, that place was a place that I used to talk, to reach out to God and say, what are you doing? And to really express my frustration with, this is not me, and I don't like it, and please help me to make it better. I began to realize that the conversations that I had had, that I had put myself in this position because I exposed so much of what I was going through that I enabled it to be used against me. You ever been in that type of situation where you share something, you're sharing from your heart, you're sharing thinking you're sharing because you have this connection, you have this relationship, and then it gets turned against you. It gets put on your back as, you created this situation and I'm no longer going to participate. And I began to think, how much of it did I create, right? Because at the end of the day, whenever we're in a situation, if you haven't learned that, you have to start with, what did you do to get into this situation? So on that walk, I had to ask myself over and over again, what did you do to get you into this situation? Why were you so trusting? Why did you leave where you were? Why are you hiding what's going on, right? Why are you walking in shame that you were released and freed from a long time ago? But being freed in one stage doesn't mean when the next one comes along, those things aren't going to come back and jump right back on your back and haunt you. And I want to say that it wasn't pride, but it had to be. In hindsight, it had to be pride to not call someone and say, hey, I'm here. Can you come and help me? Or to call home and say, I'm in this situation. Can you send for me? But remember, I'm the strong one. I'm the one who doesn't want to hear. Well, how did that happen? And be judged for, how did you let that happen? You see, because that was what was going on with where I was coming from. There was a lot of judgment. There was a lot of expectation that I'm doing well, that I'm the strong one, that I'm always going to be in that situation. And that is not true. We get into situations that are out of our control. We get into situations that we participate in. But being a strong person with a solid foundation doesn't exclude us from entering into places of devastation and heartbreak. So free yourself from that, having to carry such a burden, right? So I continued to walk. And the more I looked at my watch, the more I realized how far I was walking. And I couldn't believe it. When I got to my door, it had been a while. I had been walking because I had to avoid, heavy traffic and so on and so forth. And I was just so sad that I was so alone. But that time also benefited me in that it helped me to clear my head and realize some of the things that I had done and some of the things that I had allowed to be done to me that put me in that situation. And I began to remember that everything happens for a reason, that I might not have liked it, but there was some reason that this was happening to me. And that at some point there was going to be a stoppage. I mean, it can't go on and on and on and on and on and on and without any stopping, without any getting better, right? I had to deal with the things that were in me. I had to deal with why I felt that I could hold on to the burden. I had to deal with what I was being shameful of. I had to deal with the fact that I had put people in positions, in relationships with me, to think that I was exempt from this type of thing, from these type of worries and these type of cares about how are you going to make ends meet. And I was barely making ends meet. When I got home, I was so relieved to be there. And I looked at my watch and I had walked 6 miles. I felt like it was a time of true reflection. It was a time of reconciling in myself where I was, the position that I was in, thinking about the life that I wanted to live. How was I going to get out of this situation? It was a time of being angry with other people for not being there for me, being angry with myself for not being there for me. And when I got home, thank God my daughter wasn't there. I think I might have had oodles and noodles. No, I don't mean that's what I ate. Just that's what I ate. I mean, that's all I had. And I remember sitting at the table, 2 chairs, fixing a couple of packs of oodles and noodles and crying my eyes out, thinking, how would this ever end? And would it end? And about all of the work that I still had yet to do on myself after all of the work that I had already done. And I'm thinking, why wasn't it enough? Like, when is enough enough? And it never really is enough until we deal with the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter was that because of my pride and because of my allowing someone to treat me any kind of way, because of my lack of forethought, even though I was a planner, like my lack of thinking, what could happen in this situation if, the poop hit the fan. What could happen to my life? What kind of situation would I be putting my daughter in? I didn't think about that. And I did it to escape. I did it to escape a situation, not an abusive situation, but I did it to escape a situation, a devastating relationship, or a relationship that just didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be. I made all of those decisions on emotion. I made all of those decisions to uproot because I did not want to deal with where I was in my own space. I literally created a scenario and a situation where I went from stability to instability willingly. And then I had the nerve to cry and get mad and get angry because I found myself in a position with little or nothing. And as my mother would say, barely a pot to piss out of, right? We have to look at situations and pause. Absorb the beauty right there in the pause before we move, before we make decisions. When a situation happens, not put ourselves in a graver situation because we don't pause and stop and assess right there. Had I done that, I would have made some different decisions. Had I done that, I would have said what was going on and I would not have run because I didn't know what I was running into. What I thought I was running into didn't exist, but that was my fault. And God orchestrated the situation to put me in my place. So you see, when we get into situations, we often want to say that it was because of someone else. But what I learned from that whole scenario was that my car was on that highway in that city because I put myself in that situation. I didn't have to be there. That didn't have to be my life. But because I was disconnected, that is where I put myself. And then when people started to kind of fall by the wayside, I wanted to blame them, but it was all orchestrated to show me and to make me a better person. Yes, I lost the car because I couldn't afford to pay what you was asking me to pay. Couldn't afford what they wanted me to pay, not even in payments, right? Because the car wasn't totaled, it was fixable, but for a hefty price. So to me, it was a loss. I knew when I was hit, it was going to be a loss because of my circumstances. So I had to recalibrate. This time, I didn't do it out of pity. This time, I picked up the phone and I called my sister and I shared what was going on and I said, I'm done. This time, I depended on me and my sanity to make decisions that would put me in better places, right? This time, I was able to make sure that my daughter and I could get from one point to the other point and make it back to a community of people where we could breathe, right? So I came back, which was going forward. And remember that. Every time you go back, that doesn't mean you're going backwards. Sometimes going back is the best thing because it moves you forward. That one instance of walking those 6 miles in combination with everything else that was going on, but it was that one thing that made me come to understand that you are better than this. You have been better than this. You deserve better than this. And you need to get your shit together. Don't depend on her to get it together for you or him to get it together for you. Make the first move and go get it. And that's just what I did. I came back, I regrouped, I nestled in, I appreciated the pause. I listened, I learned, I applied what I was hearing and what I was studying. And from there, I never looked back. I never allowed myself to put me in a position to mistreat myself. That's the beauty that you can get out of a pause. So let's stop just running from one thing to the other thing. Let's stop just running from what we're dealing with. Let's learn to sit and pause and deal with what we have to deal with, interior and exterior. And then we can make decisions that will help us to have a better life, help us to have better relationships, help us to evolve into a place of self-love right now where you couldn't get me to do something that is going to put me in a position of vulnerability like that. No way at all. Period. My relationships are my relationships. They are guided by me. I'm a giver, but you won't use me. I'm a sharer, but you got to be worth me sharing. I don't tell everything to everybody. I keep my friends close to the cuff, and I know who's on my team. I also have a good idea about who is faking, right? I prayed for a high spirit of discernment so that I would no longer allow myself to be spanked on the hand that hard by God, where having my daughter was my saving grace. Because had I not had that responsibility, some other things may have happened. I was just that low. Don't fool yourself. We can get just that low, but we don't have to. Reach out to someone. Choose to be accountable for yourself and work your gifts and talents to the betterment of your life. Learn how to let people out and learn how to let people in. But you don't learn that if you don't master that pause, if you don't sit in your stuff, be accountable for your stuff, and dish accountability where it's needed all around you. 6 miles, I'll never forget it as long as I live, was a huge turning point in me evolving into the person that I am today, into the woman, the mother that I am, the grandmother, the girlfriend. That 6 miles lives with me every day and is a reminder that if you don't pay attention to yourself, you can go there. Pay attention to your finances. Pay attention to your relationships. Pay attention to your career. Pay attention to your wants. Pay attention to your needs. Pay attention. Keep your eyes open. And when you don't know what to do, pause and think that thing through so you don't make decisions from an emotional place that's going to get you into serious trouble. So that's what I'm asking you guys to do. To really start to do the work. It's not fluff when we say that. For those of us who are on the other side, who see the beauty on the other side, it took work. So don't blow it off as, oh, that doesn't apply to me. It does. And if you're not careful, if it doesn't, it will. But it doesn't have to. Learn from the mistakes that you've already made. Learn from the people around you. Right? And you will come out on the other side so much better. so much more fulfilled, so much more happy, financially savvy, emotionally stable. But you don't have to walk 6 miles crying in an unknown place to get there. Thank you guys for joining the conversation. All across social media, like, share, subscribe at Susan R. Appleton, at Power Conversations. Visit our website, buy the merch. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.